Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. This is for entertainment purposes. Without any further ado, here's Don and Lynn in Changing Times. Take it away.
Hey, thank you, Matt. I tell you what, welcome, everyone. This is our second show. Don, pretty excited. We had a good first show. And I am Lynn Morris, and
I'm Don Blackard.
Don Blackard. And, you know, we kind of discussed last week a little bit about our show. We've got two great guests today. We switched scenes here. We talked about human trafficking. Sergeant Mike with Troop D Headquarters, Highway Patrol, was here last week and did a great job. We appreciate all the great comments we had on Facebook last week. And, again, if you have any comments, we'll have Matt here to kind of watch for those, and if there's anything we need to try to answer, we'll try to answer them on the show and kind of go from there. But real issues, real discussions. And then we would love for you, as we go along, to really be part of this show and let us know what issues you want to talk about. What do you want to listen to? What do you want Don and I to research and try to help you with? This is a show that we want to be a blessing to everyone out there and to try to, in our little way, solve some of the issues and problems and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and get right into introducing our guests. So, all right, across from me is Mr. Jim Whining. Jim, how are you doing?
I'm fine. And you guys, by the way, had an audience a little over 5,500 people.
Well, that's pretty good.
Pretty awesome for a first show.
For the first show and things like that. So just keep that monitor over there looking at Don and to Elizabeth here. Don't look at Jim and me so much, and we'll get even more viewers. But no. So Jim's a longtime friend of ours, and actually this is his building here. So Jim is the CEO of Acts Ministry Group, and so met Jim. I don't know, Jim, several years ago, doing things with autism and different things that you do. And you're also a bishop for the group, and you're an attorney, and you and your wife Pam are just great people, and you have a love for the Lord, and you just help people. And so that's really good. And then I just met Elizabeth Obrey. Her husband is a chiropractor in Springfield, and met her, and she's been with Ark of the Ozarks for the last 7 or 8 years. And I know the Ark of the Ozarks personally because we have done pharmacy services and been involved with them for a long time. And they do so many great things, Elizabeth, and we're going to get into talking about what does the Ark of the Ozarks do? What type of services do they have? What type of clients do they take care of? So again, if you're watching or listening, be sure and ask us, send us a message on Facebook, and let us know if there's anything you want to know today. So Jim, I'm going to start off with you, and so I know you drove in this morning from Kansas City, so we appreciate that. We're going to get you to move down here to Green or Christian County sometime. This is God's country down here, and so we'll get you out of the big city mess and get you down here sometime. I'll help you find a place. Okay.
Okay.
But so tell us a little bit about your involvement, because one of the things that I was telling Elizabeth about yesterday was, while we were talking on the phone, was that you have an idea through Acts Ministry to maybe this fall, in September of this year, maybe have a marriage retreat for families, husbands and wives, for dealing with autistic children, because it's a family situation. It's not just the children, it's everybody's involved, and it affects everyone. So tell us kind of how you got involved in autism and you know what you're trying to do.
Well, autism for a family is a totally different hurdle, and it is a hurdle that if you can think of yourselves having if you understand this term, colic baby, and of course my oldest son was a colic baby, which means you never sleep, and if you could think of that condition continuing throughout life, and in a service capacity as a parent, that's where you're at with many of us as parents of autistic children. As time progresses, you think you're going to rely on organizations like the public school system, your church, and other organizations, but you very quickly realize that your family is all alone. And when I first experienced this was probably about 1985. And all of a sudden, it was first that subject that your son has some speech development problems. And then we went to speech therapy. And then there was the issue of, well, he has some attention deficit problems. And so we had that Ritalin issue. And then all of a sudden, well, he has some BD, some behavioral disorders. This is an old terminology. And then we'd have to have some medication for that. And then all of a sudden there becomes another equation coming in, which is called adaptability in the schoolroom, IQ, etc. And before you know it, well, actually, you know it before they tell you. They announce, and this is, you've gone from literally kindergarten to, and being kicked out of so many schools. I can't tell you how many schools. Private especially, then all of a sudden you come to that point when they say to you, your son has autism. Now, we don't know much about it, but this is what he has. And I wish I could say that today we know a whole lot about it, but we think we know a whole lot about it. And then you're sitting there across the table with your wife or your husband, and many times that's no longer in existence. There's a divorce. And but you're giving I gave our oldest son at twice a day, Anafranil, Depakote, lithium, Prozac, and Ritalin, every day, twice a day, to keep his under control situations, which it reached a point in time that by the time you're in high school, they're in high school, and of course you carry two phones, your work phone, and I had a pager for my son, and I had a pager for my son's classrooms, and I had a pager for my friend who was the superintendent of schools, because some issues would slide all the way up to the top level, and that was when I had to utilize what's called an IEP, and I can talk about all of that all day long. And I have been an advocate for not only our two boys, but for kids for years as an advocate for the IEP, because it's so important, because that's the piece that keeps you out of jail. And but I don't want to just monologue on, but I will say to the last subject, I am a person who's been divorced, and I was blessed to be remarried with a person who was a teacher. And and for 27 years, she has been right by my side. In fact, so much by my side, I remember one church that I was pastoring, they said, Jim, you do a great job supporting Pam. And I thought to myself, yeah, I do. And these are my kids. And so that's unique. And I thought to myself, how many friends and family, autistic families, and I know recent statistics says, no, that's the same, the divorce rate is the same. Well, let me tell you something. I've been involved with autism significantly in Pennsylvania, in Missouri, Kansas, and about 4 other states when I used to travel and promote the subject of issues involving autistic people. And that divorce rate should be around 80%. Because in the case of Autism Outreach Fellowship, which I've been a board member forever, every one of them and every one that's been connected has been divorced. So one of the things that I was in the process of working on, and we had planned on having, and we will have probably in the fall, when we don't have to deal with the COVID-19 and the significant problems about issues for taking care of families with autistic persons in their family. When I say autistic persons, I mean both youth and adults. Because a lot of people think that, well, it's all over at 18. No, it just starts. Because then there's all those issues involving rights. What kind of rights should this child have? Should I let him have all of his rights? Should I not have rights for him for financial, et cetera, et cetera? But the idea was to have a marriage retreat with the idea of building your foundation in Christ as a couple, so that you can enjoy yourselves as a couple and love not only your spouse, but learn how as together you can love your child who has autism. That is a major hurdle.
Oh, very good. I tell you what, so you can see, everyone, that he is definitely an expert on this. You've lived it, you're still living it, and now you're trying to help other people. So we're going to switch to Elizabeth, and I think Don's got some questions for you, but I think you have a similar story in a way, because you have 3 children that are autistic.
Yes.
And so you've learned how to cope with that. You and your husband have learned how to cope with that, because it is a family situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we'll see what kind of questions Don has for you.
Well, it's really interesting. I'm really glad that you're doing this, because when our first was diagnosed, we were given this long checklist. And so we did everything on there except one thing: marriage counseling. So while I am still together with that husband, it's been a long road. When you have 2 people, they're going to process this different. We process things differently. We take time. We have different responsibilities. And too quickly, there's a disconnect, and there's often a hyper focus on that child or that person, that young adult, so that sometimes we lose touch with each other. And we have different levels of involvement just due to time, the time factor. A lot of times one parent may take more of a lead role, and there's a lot of difficulties in that, whether it's the confidence of the other parent, small disagreements. So looking at focusing on that, keeping that bond alive and strong, so that the family can work together as a team, is so important. And that is the one thing I wish that we had done. I think that some of those bumps, some of those crises that we endured later could have been handled easier and better had we taken more care of that marriage piece.
Very good.
Well, would you just tell us about Ark of the Ozarks and what your role is there? And
Well, I am a family advocate with the Ark of the Ozarks. A couple years before I got hired on, our directors decided that there needed to be a resource for families, just to reach out, just for that information. When you have a person, whether they're a child or adult or even spouse, that's diagnosed, there's a learning phase. And so learning at where do we start, what do we do? So we opened up we're receiving calls, so we actually opened up the Family Advocacy Department to receive those calls and make that connection with the community, to provide that support, whether it be specific to ARC services or just information on how to find support, how to get services, whether they're paid, find different involvement in a lot of the nonprofits. So that's just a small piece of the ARC. The ARC actually serves people with developmental disabilities. So we serve from very young age, that first assessment piece, and we go through, so our autism specific are going to be our Cornerstone Clinic, where we're doing that assessment. Then we have ABA therapy. We have a school called Rivendell for a very specific population. And then we have our Counterpoint department, which is specifically for people with autism, whether it be somebody, teens through the lifespan. And then we have, each of our departments actually will touch the lives of people with autism. We have Renovations, which is a dual diagnosis program, our residential program, to EdRec, where we do summer camp and respite. We have a Community Connections and our employment division, and we've just purchased AM Donuts and Coffee as one of our employment ventures, so we'll be looking for that food truck. And then we also reach out not just to this area, but we are in Monette, Kansas City, Joplin. So we really try to look at, and through the Family Advocacy Office, we really track trends on what those needs are. So we have a wide variety of services, but we're always watching for new needs, for unmet needs that we can develop a program or to help support those families and those individuals, because we do serve through the lifespan. So we have a lot of people that may start with us young or come to us when they're older, and we're there to really help them learn and support them so that they can direct their own lives in becoming valued members of society, and that's our mission statement that we adhere to.
Now, as a family advocate, you have a lot of people that come to you with a new diagnosis of autism. What do you tell that family, or what advice could you give?
Well, when families get that new diagnosis, they're all in a different place. Some are excited because they've already kind of figured it out, whether there's been a sibling or a family relation, they've kind of figured it out, so they're excited to get moving. Others are maybe have a little disbelief or shock, and others are really take it hard because they don't know what to expect, and all of a sudden what they thought is a little different. So one thing that's important for families to know is that when you receive a diagnosis, that person is the same person they were before they had their diagnosis. So the day before, they're still that same person, and now you have a piece of information. That information is a diagnosis, and it's going to help you to educate yourself. You're going to learn about services. You're going to have access to therapies, supported paid services, and so these different things. So using that as a tool to learn and educate yourself. But when we're talking about autism, sometimes there is a little bit of a shock, and helping families to understand those small successes and those accomplishments will feel good, reassuring them that you're still going to have a lot of those same feelings and accomplishments. A man I heard when we first moved to this area, one of the first people I heard talked about, his name is Clay McGranahan, which he is actually a vice president at the ARC now, he wasn't at the time, said when you have a child with autism, you redefine success. And so you still celebrate those successes. I have an 18-year-old who just in the last few months learned to pick out his own shirt, not just always go to his favorite or the first one that was available, but now he looks through. And as a family, that is so exciting to us to see him at that level. So you might not reach certain goals that maybe you thought they would early on, but by redefining that success, looking at what they're doing, you will be able to recapture that excitement. And what's really important is to provide love, not to get so caught up in, am I doing everything correct? Am I giving them exactly what they need? Because there are professionals for that. We want to remember that you are a parent first, and that you are the only thing you constantly need to give your child, whether they're young or an adult, is love. And let those professionals train and guide you and support you so that you can still work within your home, but that pressure of doing everything perfect or everything right should be removed from the family.
You just have so much passion for ARC of the Ozarks, and I can see why. Talk to people about what if they're looking to get a job with ARC of the Ozarks. How would they apply? Are you guys looking for people with passion to come on board? And just, talk about that side.
Absolutely. We are always looking for people to join our team. You can go to our website, and it's listed on our website under Join Our Team. You can go and see what's available. If you're just kind of looking, wanting to learn, you can always call the ARC and talk to our HR department and just learn a little bit more about the ARC. Being part of the ARC, you become part of a team. Personally, there are benefits. There's a variety of different jobs. There's a lot of room for growth within the company. But then what you provide, those services and supports you provide, also are so very valuable to the community and also to yourself and to the person you're serving. To be able to work with somebody and celebrate those gains, those accomplishments, and also to be there for somebody when they need you. It helps not only develop a set of job skills that you can use throughout your life, in whether it be caring for another loved one in your family, and just helps you develop and see the world in a different way, to be able to realize everybody has something to give. Everybody has desires and passions and things that make them happy. It teaches you to be a person that can see beyond what we often get caught up in our daily lives, to really appreciate what life has to offer. So not only is it a good place to work because of the team and the support that you receive from being a part of the ARC, but those values that it helps to grow within inside you, and as well as the skills that are developed.
Well, I love what both of you guys have talked about today with families of autism, just that term and what that means, because you're not in it alone, and you have to join forces, and you have to have that united front. Would either of you like to talk about that? About just being a united front when it comes to the issue of autism?
Well, we both kind of got into the technical aspects of autism, and one of the things that I think people should know is that it seems, regardless of the spectrum, there's a real sensory issue, and of course, that's touch, smell, hearing, and my first son, the one. Spoke only to me until he was in the about 7 years of age. And I could not get him to converse with his mother or anybody else, including the school. And I decided to try an animal because he didn't connect very well with dogs and cats. So we brought home, and because of my wife, we brought home a llama. And he was shocked by it, and he put his hand on the fiber, and they are persons with autism, and I can say myself too, very much sensitive. Your hand's touch is very sensitive, and he loved the feel of a llama's fiber. And then they have a little noise. And I don't know if I can do this on the mic. It's a very calming hum. And he just would stand there and listen to that llama hum. And of course, it wasn't one time he was watering. All of a sudden he was watering the llama. Then he was feeding the llama. And then he turned to Pam, my wife, and he said, "I think we need more food for Skip Out." And we were all just standing there. And that was what we started our program with. It was called Showtime Llamas and Alpacas. We had it for 20 years, and we averaged 25 kids in the program every year. About half had autism. The other half were quote-unquote non-autistic affected. And with a great deal of success, and for those of you out there who have autistic children with autism, I get it right. I can say that none of our kids are in jail. All of our kids are working, and all of our kids are working or in school and learning process. It was an excellent experience, and it helped with sound, it helped with touch, and of course the outside. And we, of course, always have had horses on our ranch for balance, but that doesn't give you sensitivity. And that's what I found out with llamas. And then eventually we did alpacas for the younger ones, because we try to always get lower down and catch the issues as young as possible, not when, like in the case of our oldest boy, 5th grade, when they finally make the great statement. And that is family. And bringing the family to the ranch with their child, actually having, and this is something that autistic parents really appreciate, an actual positive input. You know, these are people that don't get involved and don't get invited to family reunions, parties that everybody else is going to in the 3rd grade, the 4th grade. Your son doesn't get invited to it, or daughter. And it's just amazing how you get used to a standard of life, which is, as I said, fast food, no sleep, and no sex. it's a wonderful family life environment.
Well, I tell you what, Jim, I wanted to say something too, Elizabeth, that, I mean, awesome story. I mean, you guys are living it, and I know the people are appreciating what you're saying. So, Elizabeth, one of the things I want to make sure people understand, so as I worked through Ark of the Ozarks with them for so many years, you have great group homes. And I watched, because I did a lot of my own deliveries, and I would maybe deliver to 8, 10, 12, 15 different group homes a night. And there are different days we do all these different group homes. You got a lot of them. And I would try to learn the names of some of your residents, and they would learn my name. That's cool. That's a victory right there.
Yes.
And also the employees. I watched the employees. They were awesome too.
Yeah,
They
the
were awesome.
relationship.
So, and then you talked about little victories. Of course, I think this is a big victory, but every once in a while, one of those residents would get to kind of graduate from the group home and live out on their own. Some of that happens. Sometimes that happens. I'd call that a big victory, that they can actually progress well enough that they can live on their own. And I think that's just awesome. I want to ask you, Elizabeth, because you had 3 children with autism, and I understand that every child is different. Every child has different personalities. Some look like you, some look like your husband, some don't look like either, and everybody's different. Same way with pets. I've had 8 English bulldogs, and they've all been different. They don't have the same personality, and so everything's different. But and there's a lot of controversy over what causes autism. One of the things I want to ask you is, do you think that because of diagnosis and advancement in healthcare and medicine, that maybe we're just diagnosing more people today, more children with autism, or is this something that's always gone on, and we've always had the same approximately number of people, but maybe they just didn't know what that was? I mean, what do you think? Are we seeing more and more people today with autism?
The research that I have read and studied, extensively on this is that, that while those things are true, better diagnosis, better identification, that the actual rate doesn't match up with just that as an explanation. But you're going to find research that whatever you're looking for, you're going to find. One thing that I think too, and you might agree, is because of the supports that we have, the knowledge that we have now from, when I first was diagnosed and I asked about autism, I got a bunch of pamphlets on abuse. From till my last one, we were handed services, very early, and had people coming into our home. But it used to be when you had a child with significant disabilities, you stopped. You didn't have any more children. And so now we're hearing families that are having multiple children with that diagnosis within a family. So we didn't stop at one, because we were able to get services and really see that not every minute of every day had to be dedicated to this child's care. And so, there's a little bit of age difference, from ours. But really, when you're looking at research, whatever you think is going to find, you're going to find something that supports it. But technically, some of the bigger research facilities are saying it's not quite matching up the rates. But
well, there's a lot of people, it is genetically for some families and some kids, but there's other reasons too. I mean, I've heard many people over time, being in healthcare myself, being a pharmacist, that people would come in, and some people would swear up and down that a vaccine caused it. And who knows what causes it? I really wish someday we would hone in on all the causes, because I think it's multiple causes. I don't think it's one individual cause. That I think there's a whole bunch of different dimensions of autism, and so I think it's something that it would be great if we could really hone in on. And that way, maybe we could kind of prevent some of it from happening. We are better, though. You're exactly right. We are better now in offering the services for the families and for the children that have autism. So we're treating the whole unit better than we used to.
Absolutely.
And so we're getting better at that. But I do think it's like you said, Jim. That I mean, this is a situation when it happens to your family. It's going to affect you and your family the rest of your life together. And it doesn't just go away when they get through maybe their teenage years. It continues. It continues because you're still responsible. And you said, boy, what a dilemma. What kind of rights do I give them? Because I'm still responsible. I'm watching them.
There's a lot of families, and I don't do the advocacy work that I used to because of becoming the president of ACTS, but there's a lot of families that get up to the senior year, that magical 17, and they haven't made a decision about the rights of their child with autism. Got that right that time. And and then, as you know, once that rolls over to 18, then it's a totally different court battle, and I've been on both sides of that battle, and so the issue as far as rights is very important, and it has to be addressed about as soon as possible. 15 or 16, it's not too early to look at those issues. Did a project in Pennsylvania for a year, Joseph Storehouse. It's a subordinate of ACTS Ministry for adults with autism, young adults, 18 to 23. And I ran a facility that had a banquet hall, a restaurant, a bar, and a gaming room. I know, hard to believe a bishop's involved in all that. Okay. My benefactor owned this, and but what I found out was they made, with help, you had to make some adjustments. And the adjustments are very important. I had a young man who was a guy that liked to pinch girls' butts. And he would do it, didn't matter where he was always pinching them. And I wanted to keep him employed, so I put him in charge of the sanitation and the dishwashing area, way back in the back of the building. And he did, and I told him, I said, if the dishes don't get cleaned, the glasses don't get cleaned, there's nothing going on here without your help. Gave him responsibility and dignity, and I turned to the young ladies that work for him, and I said, do not go back there, because something like getting your butt pinched is going to happen.
Right.
And I don't want a lawsuit. And I said, we're going to respect his back there, and we're going to be up here. They never had a problem. That's the kind of thing that an employer has to do. It has to make certain adjustments. That's an extreme example, I know. But it does point out, like some, for example, I had a bartender that could remember everyone's ticket at the bar, and we had about 40 chairs at the bar. Remarkable. But could she make certain that she was dressed properly for the next day? Really had to work on her getting her dressed properly. And once you got targeted on what their abilities were, then you focused on that, and then you had to look at the other characteristics.
Well, that really leads into supported decision-making. So if you're a family, you can Google Missouri supported decision-making, and it really teaches you, what level of support. Do they just need help with that dressing piece and understanding? You don't have to take full guardianship for that, but can you be a support to them? So because there are all levels, so I have two over 18. One, I have full guardianship, and the other person is completely independent. So, really looking, so studying that out, and like you said, you don't wait till right before. Because you want to be ready to go right at that, have everything in place at that 18th birthday, so that you can, you can work through that process and working with the lawyer to help you to understand that piece and that little tiny bit of gap. If you're all prepared, everything's done ahead of time, what does that gap look like before you can look at that guardianship? But there are many different parts of that where you can support somebody just as a family member or a friend. Help create that team and that attitude that we can reach out to, a person can reach out to their family and friends. We all do that. We all have use supported decision making. If we're going to buy a car, if we're not an expert in car, we're going to ask people. So teaching that, that person from even when they're little, you can ask for support in helping making decisions, but if you can independently make those decisions, we want you to be able to retain those rights. And then there's just that whole spectrum of in between that, your lawyers can really help you figure out.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's a far cry from that point in time when they would turn to the parent and say, "Well, you just don't know how to parent your child. This is a discipline problem that you're not handling," and then it grows up to be all of a sudden they're 18 and why haven't you fixed this for him? Why can't he do this right?
And yeah, it's so different because yes, that was how it used to be, and now we have at the ARC, we have businesses calling us and saying, "Hey, can you come do sensory friendly training or autism friendly training?"
Yeah.
So the ARC, we're really big on inclusion. We have on Facebook, you can visit our Ozarks Inclusion Partnership, where we partner with Abilities First and Empower Abilities to bring that information not only to, we really focus on those businesses and giving them those training and that skill, because inclusion and those natural supports, just like the llamas, what is in our natural environment that we can utilize. So we have those paid supports and those professionals and those experts, but what about the rest of life? We don't want to just stop there. We want to support people and then bring them to the point where they feel welcome in every aspect of lives, and there are those supports. So we work on inclusion in providing those supports and maybe changing things a little bit, giving businesses and organizations tools with the idea that hopefully 10, 20 years down the road, we won't even be talking inclusion because it's such a part of our daily lives, because we've come so far from that refrigerator mother term that was used so many, many years ago of, it being the parent's fault for being cold to their child. And we've come so far.
Oh, I know. When I look at those young men that were in Pennsylvania, their project we had, and they all took their skills that they picked up at Joseph Storehouse and are employed. And even the young boy that had a little bit of a pinching problem, he has done a great job of getting control and also doing his job. And the comment that you make about dress is so important, because that's how we start out with. And I know in my own personal life, I was very bad about that. I would lay out my son's clothes. I would lay out my daughter's clothes too. I would. Yeah. And I was just so type A. Gosh. And so that enabled them, And so now there's all these developmental stages when you push back on it and you see how you can enhance it or slow it down.
Just like growing from group homes to individualized supported living, so which is less of a big group, to that 1, 2, 3 people in a home being supported in their home, which is what the ARC, we look at that piece. So we're even going from that group home model to more independent living, and hopefully to where somebody's on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that you guys both, tremendous discussion today, just experts in what we're dealing with. One of the things I wanted to mention over at NICSA, and I know you know about the center over there at NICSA for the development disabled people that are over there that work and do all kinds of projects. I know when we had Family Pharmacy, they cleaned our cassettes. When we had our employees cleaning cassettes, you always put new liners in for the medications, but you use the same base every time, and you put new labels on, but they have to be perfectly cleaned. And our employees didn't do a very good job cleaning them, and we always would call them back out and make them re-clean them. But when I signed a contract in NICSA to have some young people doing those, they took so much pride in what they did that we never had to send anything back. And I would show them to my regular employees. I'd say, look here, look what these young kids did. Can't you do that? And so it was amazing, and you're right. So I just want the parents out there to know, and everyone to know, there's something for every one of those children.
Yes.
There's something that they can do, and you find out what it is, and they will do a really good job. They'll do a really good job. But Don, I think we're going to get ready to run out of time. So we got Matt about a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Got a couple minutes.
I would just like to say thank you so much for being part of this
Sure.
organization that I'm new to, and I just really catch the vision of what you're doing here. And I know it's a lot of work that people don't see that you're doing behind the scenes, but just really appreciate what you do, and the 5,500 people that watched it last week, I'm sure appreciate it too. And then Elizabeth, your reputation precedes you, and I've heard so much about you, so it's so great to finally get to meet you. And we're going to be back on next Wednesday,
Next Wednesday.
10 a.m., and we're going to be continuing the discussion on autism. So until then, be the change, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, very good. And be sure and tell Mike Powers hello. And we'll talk about some other great ARC people next week. Maybe we can get Rivendell on, and maybe we can get Christian County Links, maybe some other groups, Abilities Plus, and we'll continue this discussion.